So given the risks of concussion and other injuries, how do you feel about letting your sons play tackle football?
Right. Well, for me, the risks that are involved with playing a full contact sport are realities that just aren't going to go away. So I look at it as something, a game that's been so good for me and has been so productive in my development into an adult. I don't want to keep my children away from something, um, an aspect that was such a big part of my life. So I won't tell them one way or the other, play the game or not play the game. I won't do that. If my children come to me, which my oldest, who's 11 years old, uh, Keno wanted to play football, you're allowed to play football. But I want you to be educated. I want you to be uh, effective in what it is that you're doing. And so I think that that's the biggest key for me. I don't want my children walking into a situation where they're not able to a have a fair chance at success, and b where they're not able to protect themselves or play the game correctly. And so for me, that would be anything that they would want to do. So I don't deter my kids from being able to play a sport that I grew up playing.
And Keno, your eldest, he started playing tackle football when? What age?
He started playing flag at 8 years old, so he's been playing for the last 3 years, and so
Flag or tackle?
he played flag for 2 years, and now he's been playing tackle for the last 2 years. So 2-2 so far, but he's pretty good.
Is he?
He is pretty special player. So
And your youngest is 3 years old, right?
yep, little man.
Little man, LeVar the second.
That's right.
So when do you plan to sign him up for tackle football?
Well, again, I mean, for me, and we talked about it, I'm on this huge crusade to make this game a safer and better game, get the fundamentals back into the game. And so for me, I've been very busy being involved with these leagues. I work with a company called Xtreme Procision, and we work with AYF, the American Youth Football League, which is the biggest youth football league in America. So that's what he's around. Man. My let me preface this by telling you guys, my oldest son is with his mother that I did not end up marrying. It's he lives in Pittsburgh, so my time with him is we visit. He spends summers with me and different things like that. So I have an influence on him, but little man is here, and that's a 24-hour influence. So he's he's playing football right now. He's not using equipment, but he walks around with a football. When I do the camps, he can hardly, he's not tall enough literally to run through bags, but he does it. Like he gets in drills with 7, 8 year olds, and he does the drills. So it's hard to say you can't do something that genetically you're predisposed to being able to possibly be talented at doing it. He shows signs of coordination and hand-eye coordination already at 3 years old. So, I mean, again, it's just more about educating them and educating these coaches, because a lot of times you don't have the education. I used the example with you earlier. It's like schooling. If a teacher doesn't teach you the right fundamental values of education, if a teacher is telling you that 3 + 1 = 6 when it's 4, and you're going through these levels of education and you're not being educated correctly, well, you're going to continue to do it wrong. And that's just what it's going to be. And it's not because that teacher just didn't know how or didn't want to teach you correctly, I should say. They just didn't know how to teach you correctly. They weren't educated enough themselves to educate you. They merely gave you what they know. So as a former, player, and as someone who who has played the game at a high level and has an understanding of why I was able to play it at a high level, I worked with this company to create something, a training platform that would help these coaches so that they would be able to help in turn these kids. And if we're able to do that, then for me, I have done my duty in terms of helping a game become safer and become better, and that's my goal. That's my passion. The reason why I do so much media, I do a radio show, I do a TV show, I write for the Washington Post. I do all these things to make sure I keep myself relevant. If I keep myself relevant and people respect my mind and they respect what I talk about, then ultimately they look at what it is that is being brought to them to try to help them. And it becomes something that is a necessity. And that's what I'm hoping for, is that people realize the necessity of learning how to actually teach the proper techniques of playing the game of football. Because I think that we've gotten away from it. You know, everybody wants to do combine training. You're teaching kids how to run fast or run through drills or lift weights, but where did teaching these kids how to tackle go? Where did teaching these kids how to block correctly? Where did that go? Because now you just have individuals that are coaching, they're volunteering as parents, which is admirable. It's very admirable, but they're not training them correctly. So all they're doing is, okay, well, we see that it's popular to teach them to run a 40. Let's teach them to run a 40. Well, we see it's popular to see them run a shuttle run. Well, let's teach them to run a shuttle run. But when it comes to coaching them, what are you coaching them to do? Hand the ball off, throw it. You're the best athlete. You go catch the ball. You're a good athlete. Go hit them, and hit them hard. You're not telling them how to hit them. You're not telling them where to hit them. You're not telling them how to hold the ball. You're not telling them how to hand it off. You're basically saying, look, I want you to get the ball from center and hand it off. And so, again, I feel like as though we watch TV, we're consumers that watch a lot of television, and I think that we watch what happens on Sundays, we watch what happens on Saturdays in college football, and you're left to interpret it the way you want to interpret it, and then that's what you're imparting on these youth, and how you want them to play the game. And I think what we're seeing now, although concussions have been a part of football, I mean, they just have. I mean, people are giving it a lot of attention now, and that's great, because the more awareness to that situation, the better it's going to become, because the things have to be put into place to protect these kids and grown men and young men. So I think that where we're at now is we have a lot of guys that came through an era where the details and the fundamentals have been lost, and so you're seeing the reaction of it. You're seeing the results, I should say, in the NFL, in college football. You're seeing the results of a generation of players that looked at what Ronnie Lott did. They looked at, like I told you before, Night Train Lane and all those guys. If they even know that far back. But you're looking at kids that were young enough to have seen Ronnie Lott and the Kenny Nortons and the guys that come and they hit really hard. Larry Allen. I mean, you're talking about battering rams. But there was a method. There was a fundamental value there with the way those guys played. That's why they're going to be Hall of Famers. Some already Hall of Famers. That's why they're going to be what they are, because they understood and they were trained correctly. Whereas now you're just seeing a generation of kids that just watched it. Let me see if I can go out there and hit somebody as hard as I possibly can. Where football is more tackling. On the defensive side, you're going to tackle way more than you're going to hit someone. And that's the thing about it. There's different positions. There's more contact with the defensive line, offensive line. But for the most part, when you're talking about collisions that are hard enough to cause a concussion, most of those aren't going to happen where you're inches away from one another. So you're not going to see a concussion take place with a nose tackle and a center hitting each other. It's usually not going to happen. You usually are going to see it when a running back comes through the line of scrimmage and they collide, or whatever it may be, a receiver catching the ball and a cornerback or a secondary player making a break to make that play. Those are when you're going to see the collisions that have those catastrophic type of injuries. So when you're teaching these individuals how to play the game, then you teach them that you don't, if you're going to use your head, you ultimately see what you're going to hit, and you have to know the right situations to use your head. If you're running full speed and they're running full speed, you don't use your head. You do as much as you possibly can, and I know it's difficult to say you shouldn't, because when the game is moving as quickly as it is, sometimes you react on impulse. But that's what we want to do. We want to train these kids not to be so impulsive.
Right, but it's interesting you mentioned that. There's
wrong way.
There's a video on the internet I was telling you a little about earlier. Video on the internet of 2 8-year-olds who it's this drill where they get up and they run at each other, and the whole idea is just to knock the hell out of each other. What do you? I mean, there are two coaches standing there promoting this thing. What's your thought on that type of drill and that type of coaching?
It's testosterone driven. And it's not. If it's not being productive, then if you're just doing it based on I got my guys hitting hard, then it's non-productive. If you're going to do a drill like that, show them how to use their shoulders and their hands. In the Oklahoma drills, they call it what is referred to from when I played. If you're going to get up and you're going to come hit, you fit that ball carrier correctly. Get your head across his body, try to get it on the ball, wrap up, get your chest into the play, and do it correctly. But if you're talking about, we want to see who can hit the hardest, who can be the most physical guy, before all of that takes place, you got to understand that these kids have got to know what it is that they're doing, because they don't know. That video shows, like you said, 2 individuals that are coaching these kids that are like, you got my guy, I got my guy, let's go, come on, get up, hit them, this and that. And they get up and they hit each other because they want to impress their coaches. They want that reassurance. They want that positive feedback. And so they will run into each other at full speed. So that same want and need to impress your coach, if you have a well-educated coach on how to show them the proper ways of doing it, they'll do it the right way with that same type of energy as well. And that's what we need to start promoting. That's what we need to get across to not only these players, but more importantly, we need to get it across to the people who are showing these guys, these kids, how to play the game. And that's you can't say how important that is. I don't, for me, I went to Penn State. Adam Talaferro was paralyzed. He went to make a hit, went head first, hit the ground, loses all movement and all kinds of different things like that. He's been a great story. He's able to walk now. He's got a foundation. He's doing very well. But don't lead with your head that way. Don't go hitting into the ground with your head that way. If for me, because children and people, I've mentored so many guys and I've helped train so many guys. If what I'm doing can prevent that catastrophic injury. When you look at youth, especially Little League football, all right, you're talking about these kids are not going to be necessarily fast enough or strong enough that if they're playing the game correctly, that they actually can inflict the type of harm on themselves that will kill them or will keep them from being able to be productive citizens in school and different things like that. Everyone just needs to be educated more. Instead of placing a premium on not letting kids be able to play football, because here's my thing, what are the alternatives? When I grew up, we played football before I even put a pad on for an organized team. We played on concrete. We played in grass. And we played games. We played street hockey. We played wiffle ball. We even played baseball, but we broke windows that time, so we had to go to wiffle ball so we didn't get in trouble. But those things are now being replaced with video games and computer time and different things like that. And we're fighting so many different things as a result of that. We have so many kids. The obesity rate has gone up so high. Those medical people need to be discussing how we figure out the proper ways to go about playing athletic sports activities, because ultimately they're going to sit and play Madden football. They're going to play NCAA football. They're going to play the shooting games, Black Ops and different things like that. They're going to be so interested in just sitting down, drinking soda, eating chips, playing the game, sitting down, drinking soda, eating the chips, playing the game, that at that point in time where you say, okay, now it's okay for you to go play football, it's okay for you to go play a contact sport, they looking at you like, please, I got my chips, I got my drink, and I got my video game. And if I don't want to play a video game, you know what? It plays DVD movies too. So let me pop a movie in between my breaks of trying to beat these games. I'll watch a movie, like order me a pizza, mom, scram. You know what I mean? Like, that's not what we want. That's not what us as Americans represent. We've fallen into that vicious cycle, and I would say, again, for me, let's be more proactive with having a solution to these things, as opposed to being so gung-ho about saying, you know what, they shouldn't do it. Wait till they're 16, 17, 18 years old before they're able to play. And they should be developed a little bit more by then, where I'm okay with them playing. Well, if you're not educated all the way up to the process of doing that, then you're going out there, and what's your real reason for going out there to play at that point in time? I mean, for me, the hazards of working so hard to keep kids away from the things that have been historically very well received, very popular, and a part of the total fabric of our society. What other sport pulls together so many different ethnic backgrounds and different racial groups and different levels of living? You got poor, middle class, upper class, super wealthy. What other sports pulls those people together for one moment? Maybe it's for 4 hours, maybe it's just for 2 seconds, where someone who is a white collar worker that would never even say hi to you in a grocery store or in passing, might even clutch their purse, whatever it may be, based off of what the social norms are, can sit there and high-five you or hug you or actually go as far as to kiss you on your face because of the total elation and joy of what that sports team, that sports football team brought you at that moment in time. So for me, for football to represent something so strong, something so dear, and something so unique to us as American people, to me, I look at it as what it's doing by individuals not wanting kids to play the sport or not promoting the sport the correct way. Helping to put the things in place that will preserve and actually make the sport better. Those people that kind of keep them from that, I start to look at where I came from. All right, my grandparents, both my grandfathers worked in steel mills. All right. You hear of all the accidents and injuries, missing toes, jacked up fingers, skin, all the kind of soot that goes with everything that goes with working in these mills. Well, my grandfathers were men. Like, however you want to define it, they did their 9 to 5. They were in those intense environments, and they worked. They were men. And you know what? They raised men. and my dad is a man, and my dad went to Vietnam in the army, and he gave up a foot and a leg for this country, for our freedoms that we enjoy. And as a man that couldn't even run, he raised 3 men, and he did so well with one that he was actually able to be the best player in America twice, 3 times, okay? As a parade player of America in high school, as the best defensive player in college, as the highest rated player going into the draft. Am I blaming, am I taking credit? Is this self-indulgence? No, it's not. My dad raised a man. He made the stakes very high for us, me and my brothers, to be overachievers. My father walks on rooftops, cleaning gutters. I have both my legs, have my health, full health. You won't see me on a roof cleaning my gutters. My dad doesn't have a foot on either one of his legs. He's missing part of his leg above his knee on one side. And yet and still, as a man, he said, I will not have an individual carrying me around to the bathroom. I will not sit in a wheelchair for the rest of my days of my life. I will get up. And he learned how to walk. And he learned how to function as a human being using prosthetic limbs. So for me, I look at all the things in my life that I've seen, and to look at individuals being too scared to let their children adventure out and to do things that are active and to compete, to me, is sissification. And I think that's the only way to put it. I feel as though we've come to a point in time where we are so overly protective over our fondest asset, which is our children, that I think it's to a fault. I protect my children. I do not want to see my children hurt. I do not want to see them in a situation where they fail. But ultimately, if I keep them from feeling any pain, if I keep them from competing to try to be the best, if they don't realize that there's a real world out here where you're playing musical chairs, and the older you get, there's millions of people trying to get in that same seat when the music stops. If you don't realize that as a child, then now, as a parent that tried to protect you, I've actually given you a crutch. I've actually set you up for failure. And that's not what I want to be a part of. And ultimately, that plays to the tune of, I would much rather be proactive about anything that involves children to begin with. Not just my own, but children to begin with. They need to understand the realities that surround them. And that's what I'm all about. I don't want to just throw dirt on top of it and say, no, don't do that. No, don't do that. And continue to do that, because that will always be a trend that they will take with them. And I just don't want to be a part of that. Raising a man, the true definition to me is you're a provider, you're respectful, you're educated, and you're aware. And I think that playing football, I started playing football when I was 8 years old. And the one thing that I learned growing up in Pittsburgh playing football, it allowed me to have exposure that I would have never had outside of those lines. You know, when I went out there and I played and I saw other guys competing, and we're competing, and I want to be better than you and you want to be better than me, when the game was over, we were closer. I always felt the bonds with guys that I played ball with were totally different than somebody that I just sat in a classroom with. Why? Because you struggle together. We did bear crawls together. We cried together. I didn't want to do all those wind sprints. I didn't want to run hills at the end of practice to get in better shape. But you know what? We did it. And when we went out there and we played, win, lose, or draw, we did it together. And it taught that teamwork. It taught camaraderie. And as an adult that is a retired former NFL football player, I'll be 33. hopefully God has it in my cards to be here long enough to see my kids have kids. I have a lot of things to do. I don't want to just sit here and sit on the money that I made playing football. I have a lot ahead of me. And I feel as though if I'm going to be lazy because I was able to make a way playing football, my children see that, you know? So I'm very active, and knowing that I just can't stop. I watched how Joe Paterno was a workaholic. My high school coach, Jack McCurry, I watched those guys be workaholics. And you never really understand why back then, because you're just playing the game. But in all actuality, those are lessons that were learned by being a part of that game, by playing that game. They both played. My high school coach played college ball. My college coach, he played college ball. Every single coach that was on our staff played ball at one point, and most of them at Penn State played for Coach Paterno at Penn State. So it's, for me, I think that it's something that has taught me so many, like countless amounts of lessons playing football, and I would never ever not want to give that opportunity or be resistant to my children having that opportunity. I was able to hang out with, I got to be mentored by Dwight White. I'm young. What am I getting mentored? I don't know if I'm going to the NFL. Why is he wasting his time talking to me, telling me about the days of the steel curtain? We live in the same housing community, and I would run past his house. I'd ring his doorbell just to see if he was there. And we formed a relationship through the years. Loved him to death, And I meet Jerome Bettis while I'm in high school, while I'm in college, and he's a mentor to me. Just an awesome human being. And you know what? It was because I could play. So if somebody is exposed to, and I'm not saying not because I could play and was really good, I'm saying because I could play. I played football. So that could have been anyone living in Kinvara, in Pittsburgh, that was chose to try to make themselves better, and knew that it meant enough to that individual to go to Dwight White's door and ring his doorbell, and he would have talked to them. Whether they made it another day, made it to college, made it to the NFL, he would have still did the same thing. You know why? Because he didn't know. He didn't know. So I'm just saying, that gave me those opportunities. I'm able to relate to this grown man as a high school kid because we play the same sport. We share a common bond. I would never not want my children to be a part of that.
So, what Eddie Mason, former teammate of yours, I mean, what would you say to someone like Eddie who plans to keep his son out of tackle football, have him just play flag, until 14 or so when his body matures?
Eddie Mason is a phenomenal human being. We are very close. We've played a lot of years together in Washington. He trains guys. He trains guys as well. He's very active. And I just think that it comes down to individuals just having different schools of thought. I think that's what I attribute it to. I don't think that there's a right or a wrong answer. I know that Eddie Mason's child isn't going to be sitting on the couch getting obese. I do know that. Like, that kid is going to be active because his dad is very active. So there's always different degrees. For me, I'm not going to sit there and say that's the approach I would take. I think that it makes sense that, yes, your body is physically mature by then. But then again, at 14, your body is still going through a lot of changes. I had my most injuries when I was 13, 14 years old. Not because of the sports that I was playing, but because my joints, my growth plates were wide open, because that was when I had my biggest growth spurt, and then I stopped. I grew at 13, 14 years old, I grew to 6'3". So there could be a more serious injury that take place at that age than theoretically while you're younger. Your body heals quicker the younger you are. I mean, that's just what it is. So, I mean, I think we all have different schools of thought. on how we approach things. I want my children to be active, and I want them to be a part of sharing and learning and different things like that. And ultimately, I want them to have discipline as well. You know, I'm a military kid. I just want my children to have opportunities to be exposed. And I think that the more you can find outlets for them to get that exposure, I think you do it. And you just closely monitor it. So where Eddie doesn't want his children to play until they get to a certain age, I mean, he's a smart man. He's an educated man. So there's an educated reason as to why he doesn't want them to be doing full contact football until then. I would say the same thing. I would say I am an educated man. I'm a bright individual. So if I have my kids out there playing at a younger age, there's a rhyme and a reason as to why I'm allowing them to be a part of full contact football.
Yeah. What Eddie told us was that he kind of hopes his kid gravitates, if he has a chance, he's going to have him gravitate to another sport. Mm-hmm. Soccer, baseball.
They're exposed to all sports. And my requirement is, if you want to do a sport, you have to try to be the best, and you can't quit. So you can choose whatever sport you want to play, but you have to choose. You have to be active, and I just require you to try to do your best, and you're not allowed to quit. So that's just how I look at it. I would never, for me, I know what this game has meant to me. I would never actively try to deter my sons from wanting to play the game.
Gotcha. Would you describe football as relatively safe?
If it's correct, if everybody who's involved understands the game, I think it's relative. I think it's as safe as other sports. I mean, the most catastrophic sport is cheerleading. It's cheerleading, people. Do your homework. They don't have no pads, no helmets, none of that. Cheerleading. So the bottom line is, when I look at football, I don't look at football as not being a safe sport. I look at it as it's a sport. And that's the bottom line. And much like any other sport, if it's done correctly, you're going to be okay. If it's not done correctly, then you stand the chance of having situations that aren't so good take place.
How often is it not done correctly at the youth level?
More than you know, it should be. It's too much incorrectness associated.
Why don't you re-ask that, Tom?
Yeah, that's just,
Yeah.
I saw you were sort of struggling there. Can you re-ask that?
Yeah.
How often is football not done correctly? No.
At the youth league.
Yeah,
I just got caught up.
Yeah. You just asked how often at the youth level is it not done correctly?
Yeah. How often at the youth level is it not done correctly?
Too often. I think at the youth level, again, there's not enough understanding of the techniques of the game, and that's why it's very important that youth leagues see the value in getting individuals that do understand how the game works, getting them involved. And I mean, my hat's off to AYF for bringing me on board to help spearhead that situation, because you have over 75,000 coaches, and so that, who knows how many players there are. If you have 17,800 teams in a league, that is a lot of teams. So for them to see how much value there is in the company Xtreme Procision, to come on board with them and start training these coaches correctly on how to do it the right way, then hopefully it becomes a trend where people will see that value in bringing something to the table that will make it a better, a well-ran machine, a teaching mechanism that will birth a whole generation of really solid, fundamentally sound football players. And to me, that's the key. But all too often, it's not the perfect situation, and it makes sense to hold your children until they get a little bit older to understand it themselves, because you don't have an individual that is capable of teaching these kids the proper way of playing the game, and that's unfortunate. That has been a part of that culture for a long time. I think that maybe it's more media, out there exposed than it has been in the past. But a lot of football players don't want their children to be exposed to what we were exposed to as football players. I mean, that's not new. So I don't look at that as being a new phenomenon or anything like that. Depending on how your thoughts and your feelings towards the game were when you played, or how you played it, usually has a direct bearing on how you feel about your offspring being a part of it. You're more aware of the risk.
As a media member.
Us as players, we've always, when you sign up, you know what you're signing up for. That's the reality of it. You're going to break bones. You're going to tear ligaments. You're going to turn ankles. You're going to get concussions. You're going to get dinged up, is what we call it. It's becoming more of a media phenomenon now. It's a polarizing story to have. It's something that has not been generally historically acknowledged as being a part of this sport, and now it's become a reality that has to be addressed. It's a harsh reality, but it's not a new reality. So it's for me, it is what it is, but it's just new for you guys to pay more attention to it than it is for football players. So I don't think that is now something that will make football players lean more towards saying, oh my gosh, I don't want my child to play. They know. They know. You lose your spouse, your loved one, your husband, your companion, your mate, and it could be directly or is directly associated with probably the contact that was taken while he was playing football, I'm assuming. Of course you could understand why she would feel that way. Would you want to have the same thing happen? I mean, but here's the thing about it. For that to be one situation where an individual dies at a young age based off of maybe contact taken to their head, the trauma to their brain, it's hard to sit there and look at that and say everything has to be based upon that. That's just how I look at it. I've lost a cousin to being hit by a car. And I have thoughts, when we're near busy streets and different things like that, it's a given that you pay attention to your children no matter what. But you don't think that I take proper precautions. You stand on this side. You never stand near the street, ever. You stand on this side of me when we're walking down the street. If there's a busy street and you can stand it, you stay as far away from that busy street as you possibly can. It's the same difference. Sometimes tragedy strikes, and that's unfortunate, but they happen. Tragedies happen, and you can't stop life because of tragedies that may have happened. You can work to lessen it possibly taking place, and you can strategize on trying to lessen what could possibly happen. But I think what it comes down to is you can't take back what happened to her husband. She can't take it back. And here's the thing. You take your boys out of a sport that your husband played, and I'm assuming again, ultimately passed away at an early age from, the bottom line is that child may want to honor his father by playing that game. And here's the thing, at some point, he may decide to do it whether she wants him to do it or not. So to me, I look at it as I would rather look at it from the standpoint of, let me help educate my child as much as I can. Let me be supportive in the way that will mold that individual to try to be as educated in the decisions that they make. And that's all you can do. I can't, at some point her child will be old enough to leave the nest. And what decisions that child makes from that point on solely are that child's decisions to make. And here's the thing, if you're continuing to make the decisions for that child beyond that point of where, that you shouldn't, and they should be theoretically a man, then what type of impact is that having on that individual as well? So it's a slippery slope, but I most certainly would understand why you would pull your children out of a sport if your husband played that sport and played it at a high level and ended up passing away at an early age, possibly due to what took place while you were playing. I certainly would have no qualms about saying I understand that. Understanding of what could possibly take place. Look, again, I don't want to live. I won't live life scared. Okay, I will not go through my life scared, and I don't want my children to go through life scared. Every individual opportunity, challenge, struggle, whatever it may be, is just that. It's an individual challenge, opportunity, struggle. So if my child were to endure an injury like that, if I were to endure an injury like that, again, you got to take into consideration, I'm the child of a man who lost his legs. All right? So it's not as though I'm speaking hypothetically. You have to overcome the challenges that are in your life no matter what. Because you could try to protect yourself and shield yourself all you want. The bottom line is you are going to have challenges. You are going to have things that you have to overcome in your life, no matter where it comes from. You're going to have them. And I'd rather live my life knowing that I lived my life rather than leave here and people look at my legacy be a legacy of that man, all the dude did was stay in his house because he didn't want anything to ever happen to him. He spent his whole life trying to avoid anything bad that could happen to him. Like, it's not realistic. It's just not realistic. So again, if that were to happen to my child, would it have a devastating impact on me? Yes. But then you know what? Away go the tears, and it would be more beneficial for me and my wife to be supportive in the rehab. Look at Nick Bonacani. Look at how those things happen. And I'm sure they couldn't be more prouder of their son and all the research that has been done based off of how strong and how dedicated he's been and how their family has been dedicated. That would be more to the tune that I would be singing, is this is something that took place, so let's work towards finding a solution. Which, again, I work with Xtreme Procision. I ultimately have been proactive. I'm not going to just sit here and say, you know what, if something were to happen, it happens, or I don't want my children playing. I am being proactive in a sport that I know a lot about, and in a sport that I love very much, and I'm being proactive. I'm not just sitting back on the sideline. Of course you worry about it. I worry about it. I mean, that's a part of my life. I will always be able to say I played football at at Penn State for the legendary Joe Paterno. I don't want that to be diluted now. I don't want the museum and the sports aspect of it where they walk into the sports museum and see, my Buckus Award or see the awards I've accomplished, the pictures. I don't want that to get dust on it and nobody ever goes to see those things. I mean, part of that is immortality. I don't want to see this sport fade away, which again, I don't see how it could. I mean, if you look at the ratings, I mean, look at your employer. They just gave what, $300 million to Texas to cover them. It ain't cause of basketball player. I'll tell you that right now. It ain't cause of no round ball. It's not cause of hockey. It's not cause of soccer. Okay? Longhorns, hook 'em horns. Yeah. Football. So it's very much alive. I think it's like over 300 million in climbing that do participate in fantasy football. Ask John Madden. Ask EA Sports. Is football falling off? Ask those individuals. So what I'm saying is, let's make something that is a staple of our society a safer game, and make it a better game, and that's what it comes down to.
So, show me what your product is and how it works.
Here's an interesting one right here. Okay, this is a Perfect Hands jersey, right? And on this jersey, I can actually show a young individual or even an older individual a level of where to put their hands, whether it be a receiver, whether it be an offensive lineman, whether it be a defensive lineman. These are general positions, general places on the body that will never change. So to do a two-hand punch as an offensive line, you're going to punch there. If you want to do a drive block where you grab the guy and you drive him, you're going to grab under the armpits. Yeah, if you're going to grab the outside, if you're going to grab and rip, it's all marked, it's all mapped out. And I think because it's so mapped out and so easy, anyone could teach it. So here's a tackling jersey, okay? This is where the ball usually is generally going to be. So you see the color, you punch where the color is. You punch through. That's where the color is. That's where the ball is going to be. If you're going to hit and use your helmet, you see with your face. So by giving them a visual to see, you don't want to go running in 100 miles an hour and hit somebody with the crown of your head. When you run in to tackle somebody, generally, if you're moving really fast, your head is going to go to one side or the other. Now, if you're in close quarters and you have to fight your way off of a blocker and then the guy's right there, you want to put your face, and it shows you exactly where you should put your face, whether it be in their back when you're trying to go, try to pop the ball out. That's where you fit your face. So as you keep your head up and you punch through. So it's just our way of being proactive and teaching them how to do it correctly. This shirt in particular could actually be the difference in somebody getting a concussion or not getting a concussion. This shirt could actually be the difference in somebody getting paralyzed because they hit wrong and not getting paralyzed because they hit correctly. So it's just a matter of being proactive and being able to make something simple. I mean, with all the great football minds that have ever been a part of football, from coaches to players, this has never been done. And the one thing, when I've asked the different coaches, Coach Bradley at Penn State, different coaches I've talked to, they all say, I can't believe no one's ever done it. Like, no one's ever done it? Like, no one's ever done it. I mean, you take this shirt right here. I really like this one. This shirt in particular right here is more advanced. You see the numbers on there. What it is you get familiar with the numbers and you can actually be taught how to properly do pass rush technique. So I could say, hit 1 on this arm and slap 5 on this arm, or grab 7 on this side and pull and club 4 on the other side. As a receiver, you have to do the same things. The basic functions of football are all related. So what an offensive lineman has to do is relative to what a defensive lineman has to do. What a receiver has to do to get off of the ball is very relative to what a linebacker has to do rushing the quarterback. It's all very relative in the movements that you have to do. So it makes it very, very impactful, and it makes it very, very, to me, imperative to have individuals have these learning mechanisms so that they can play better, so that fundamentally they can be that much more sound in what they're able to do. If you're more fundamentally sound, then the safer it's going to be. If you know not to lead with the crown of your head when you go to hit somebody, rather than lead with the crown of your head, I'm actually going to get my chest up, get my arms right, drop my level, and stick my face on there, where it's a fit. Then now you're talking about playing the game right. And to me, I don't know about you, but it would mean everything to me to be able to watch a game, and whether it be Pee Wee League or be the NFL, see them playing it right. That's just, that's the goal. And I'm on that movement. And I will not stop, because again, it's imperative for the sport to have this. Otherwise, you never know what may happen. I mean, injuries will happen. This is not going to take the injuries out of the sport. But again, at the end of the day, hey, it's making the sport better. And I'm a part of helping make it better. And that's what means something to me.
Very nice. Okay.
That was great.
Yeah.
That was right on.
I have done my duty in terms of helping a game become safer and become better, and that's my goal.